In 2000, he was awarded Prospector of the Year award by the Australian Association of Mining and Exploration Companies for the Cosmos discovery. Tony.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to talk to you about the Azure Minerals story. Just as a recap, as John mentioned, Azure Minerals was focused on working in Mexico for many years, but about 18 months ago we made the decision to pivot back out of Mexico, back into Western Australia, and to look for opportunities here in the gold and the nickel space. And about 15 months ago, we announced that we had entered into agreement to acquire interests in a nickel project and 3 gold projects from that very famous prospector Mark Creasy. And that nickel project is our Andover-nickel-copper sulphide project, and where we've had a great deal of success with our exploration. And literally that is the sun rising over the Andover complex with 3 of our drills there in the photograph. And it's one of the most exciting projects that I've ever been involved with. The usual disclaimer and statements can be seen in this presentation and on our website. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners, both on the land in which we currently are today, but particularly on the land in which we operate in the Pilbara region. The Ngarluma people are the traditional custodians up there, and we have a very close and strong relationship with them, and we want to be able to keep that developing positively as we go forward. So we definitely pay our respects to the Ngarluma. On the ESG front, and this is something that you're going to hear about from a lot of companies going forward, not just here today, but Azure does take our environmental, our social, our community and stakeholder engagement responsibilities very seriously. And we have implemented the policies to ensure that we do everything to the absolute best possible standard that we can to achieve a very strong and harmonious and positive relationship for our projects going forward. Corporately, we've got 2 major shareholders. We have Deutsche Balaton, which is a German investment fund, who are a large participant in a multitude of different West Australian junior and mid-size explorers and miners. Also the Creasy Group with 15%, which is mostly as a result of acquiring the interests in those projects from Mark Creasy. With about 310 million shares on issue, we've got a market cap at the moment of about $93 million. And at the end of the last quarter, we had about $30 million in the bank. We are spending about $1.5 million a month, so we're sitting at around about $26 to $27 million in the bank at the moment. So the company is in a very secure position financially. So the main project of ours and the focus for our discussion today is the Andover nickel and copper sulphide project. It's a 60-40 joint venture. Azure bought the 60% from the Creasy Group, so it's not an earn-in joint venture. We actually own that 60% outright, and Mark Creasy owns the remaining 40%, which is free carried through to the decision to mine stage. And of course, most people in this room and most people in Western Australia would be very aware of Mark Creasy and his incredibly strong track record of success in either discovering or being involved with projects where there are major discoveries have been made, initially in the gold space, but more recently in the nickel copper sulphide space. And we have partnered up with Mark, and it's a very strong, I guess in some ways, tick of approval from him in his belief in us to be able to take the Andover project forward through the exploration stage, through to the development, and hopefully the mining stage. So the Andover nickel project's located in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, just outside of Karratha and Roebourne. There's a photograph there of one of the drill holes that we drilled early on, the 3rd hole. Very high grades of nickel and copper mineralisation hosted in massive and semi-massive sulphides. One of the great benefits of Andover is its location. It's located just outside the town of Roebourne, which is about 3 to 5 kilometres away to the north. It's 2.5 hours out of Perth, so fly to Karratha, drive along the main northwest coastal highway, which goes right through the northern part of our tenement. So we've got great access into and throughout the project area. We've also got really good communications there, so mobile phone coverage throughout the project area, and power, water, everything you could possibly want for an exploration and mining project is located probably within 1 hour's drive of our project area, so that the project locations don't come much better than this. So if we zoom in a little bit on the geology here, and what you see there in the green rock type in the middle, that is the Andover layered mafic ultramafic intrusive complex. Our tenement, which is a single exploration licence, covers around about 70% of the intrusive complex. So being a layered intrusion, it has great similarities to a number of other provinces or areas in Western Australia where there have been significant discoveries of nickel, copper and platinum group metals. For example, there's many different layered mafic, ultramafic intrusions on the Fraser Range, for example, where IGO and Legend and others are currently exploring and mining. With the Julimar complex with Chalice Mines, who you would have heard from earlier today, and also the Savannah project for panoramic, which has a great deal of very strong similarities with what we've got here at Andover. So having gone into the Andover complex, we recognised very early on that it's an incredibly fertile district here. There is a lot of examples of nickel and copper sulphide mineralisation. You have outcropping gossans at surface with oxidised nickel and copper mineralisation, and beneath that, we're drilling very strong sulphide mineralisation, but we've also found outcropping at surface through our geological mapping that there are zones of fresh sulphide mineralisation, fresh nickel and copper sulphides actually outcropping at surface. So it's a very fertile and very prevalent and rich province there. What we've also identified is the fact that electromagnetic surveying works an absolute treat on this project. So unlike some other areas in Western Australia, for example in the Fraser Range, here at Andover we don't have any soil cover. It's all fresh rock outcropping. We don't have any salt water. We have no black shales or graphite or other sulfidic sediments like that, which can create false anomalies for the electromagnetic surveying. The EM surveying to date has been a one-for-one correlation. You drill into an EM conductor, you will hit nickel and copper sulphide mineralisation. So far, it's a fantastic success rate. So our work over the last 12 months, once we got onto the ground, has been to get stuck straight into what we call the VC7 area, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail about shortly. But the VC7 East deposit was the one that we focused straight onto. We've been drilling on it for about 9-10 months now. We're getting very close to completing a resource drill out. That drilling should be finished within the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then allowing maybe 2 months or more to get our assays back. We should be in a position to announce a maiden mineral resource for VC7 East deposit in the first quarter of next year. And once we've finished drilling on the VC7 East deposit, we will move the rigs over onto VC7 West, which is an area that we've also drilled and have hit nickel as well, and also VC23. Both of those can be seen on the diagram here as those pink dots. And those are the areas where our focus or our drilling has been focused up till now. But elsewhere, our electromagnetic surveying has identified numerous other conductor targets which have not yet been drilled. I've highlighted 5 on there, but they just happen to be the 5 that we're going to be carrying out initial exploration on. But there's probably at least another dozen or more that are on that on the property, and those targets have yet to be drilled. So if we zoom in on the VC7 corridor, this corridor is a zone of anomalous electromagnetic conductivity, which contains a significant amount of nickel and copper sulphide mineralisation. It is at least 1,000 metres long in an east-west direction. The mineralisation that we've drilled starts at or very close to surface and goes down to well over 500 metres below surface. It was initially identified by the Creasy Group with their exploration with some outcropping gossans were sampled with anomalous nickel and copper. They did a small EM survey which had confirmed that there was a conductor sitting underneath it, and they did initial 2 holes and they hit a bit of nickel sulphide mineralisation. Basically, they found the smoke, and we went in there and we carried out much more detailed, large-scale EM surveying, identified much stronger and larger conductors at depth and started drilling. And that's been our main focus for basically the most of the last year. And to date, in the VC7 East and VC7 West together, we've drilled about 100 holes into that area for about 46,000 metres of drilling. And there's another prospect called VC23 where we've also drilled another 8 holes. and we've hit nickel in all 8 of those as well. So 3 main targets have been tested. 3 main EM targets have been tested, and all 3 of them have come back with significant nickel and copper sulphides. As you can see, the majority of our focus has been on the eastern part of the mineralisation and of that zone, and that's the part where the initial mineral resource will be calculated for and released in the early part of next year. Interestingly enough, more recent work to the east of our drilling, further east of the east zone, has identified outcropping sulphide-rich mineralisation at surface, so fresh sulphides at surface, plus some gossans outcropping at surface that continue for several hundreds of metres at least further out to the east. So there's potential here for making this zone much larger. So if we look at a long section, so we're looking here at a vertical section, a slice through the VC7 corridor. On the left-hand side, you've got the VC7 West target, and on the east side, you've got the VC7 East deposit. So on the eastern side, you can see the dots on there are all the pierce points for the drill holes that have gone through the mineralisation. The ones that have got a blue dash circles, those are the ones we're still waiting on assays for, and as you can see, most of them are around the outside of the deposit. And within the deposit, you've got the red and the orange dots, which are a representation of the width and the grade of the mineralisation. But basically, you can see that the mineralised zone starts at surface. It continues down for at least 500 metres below surface, and from east to west, it's about 400 metres long. So it's a significant body of mineralisation, and that is the area where our exploration and resource drill out has been focused. Once that drilling has been completed in about a month's time, we move over onto the west zone. We know that we've got mineralisation over there. We've had several mineralised hits. We've got a number of intersections of 4 metres of around 4 to 5% nickel, so high tenor in that particular western zone, and that's an area that we'll be focused on in the next probably 6 months or so. But just zoom in just a little bit on the east zone, on the east deposit. It's the same heat map long section that we saw in the previous slide. But what this shows is that the mineralisation is very continuous from surface down to the depths that we've drilled it. The mineralisation zone is about 400 metres long, maybe 500 metres from top to bottom. In the central part of the deposit itself, it's around about 30 metres thick in true width. The overall average is in that sort of 15 to 30 metre range, and the nickel grades, average nickel grades in that larger section, around the 1 to 1.5% nickel. And within that, you get these higher grade zones that are 4 to 6 to 8 metres wide of massive sulphide mineralisation. And those massive sulphides contain 2 to 3 to 4% nickel. And John, there's a table there at the bottom which shows some of the drill hole intersections that we announced back on the 13th of September. And on the left-hand side, you can see there's 4 to 5, 6 metres wide, running that 2 to 3% nickel and up to 1% copper. And on the right-hand side, the greater mineralised envelope that contains the overall mineralisation. So that's the drilling we've done up till now, but the main targeting tool that we've been using is our electromagnetic surveying, and it is the absolute key driver for our success that we've had to date. So we've carried out an airborne VTEM survey, so an airborne electromagnetic survey, which gives us an indication of where there are conductors. We then go in and do surface fixed loop EM surveying, which better defines those conductors, and then we undertake drilling, which then we do downhole electromagnetic surveying to vector in onto the more massive parts of the deposits. And as I mentioned earlier, we've drilled 3 targets to date, VC7 East, West and 23, and all 3 of them have come up trumps as far as nickel sulphide mineralisation goes. So no false positives whatsoever. And there's plenty yet to drill. So this is an airborne image of the VTEM, the airborne electromagnetic survey that we flew. The purple and the pink and reds are the very highly conductive parts of the survey, or the highly conductive responses from the survey. And bottom left-hand corner, you can see VC7 down there, and next to that VC23 in the white circles. Those are the 2 areas that we've drilled to date. 3 different targets, hit three zones of mineralisation. Then we've got numerous other targets which have never yet been drilled, and these are larger and some places more conductive. And as soon as we've got Aboriginal heritage approvals in place, we'll be able to go out and drill test those. And I'm pleased to be able to say that we have a very strong engagement with the Ngarluma community up there, and they are scheduled to be going out there very shortly to do clearance surveys on all of the ones that you can see circled out there. So within a very short period of time, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have the drill rigs out on those regional targets. As you can see with that large one, that large oval-shaped one that's in the middle, VC18, it's a whale. Mark Creasy calls it his blue whale, and he's crying out for us to go and harpoon this thing. However, it's never been drilled, and it looks too good to be true. It's like drilling that and finding nickel would be like winning lotto 3 weeks in a row. However, it is definitely a valid target. We've carried out surface fixed loop EM surveys. It is a defined body of conductivity hosted in bedrock at about 300 metres below surface. Now, whether it's got nickel in it or not, we won't know until we put some drill holes into it. But it's certainly a very strong target, and it's one of many that we'll be testing over the next few months. And if it was to become in, well, I'd watch this space. And just to say that if there are more of these targets that are positive for nickel and do host nickel sulphides, then the Andover complex in itself will become a nickel province in its own right. And I'm not saying it's a new Kambalda or anything like that, or at least not yet, but the potential is here for a lot more discoveries to be made within this body. In addition to all the exploration we've been doing, we've also commenced our development studies program. So one of those components is the metallurgy. It's intended to make sure that we can de-risk the project going forward. Metallurgical test work for the first stage has been completed. Excellent results. We can make a nickel concentrate. We make copper concentrates. We get good recoveries, good grades. There's no deleterious or bad elements within those concentrates. Quite clean. And having shown these characteristics to international metals traders, there is a strong, they're very affirmative that this is something that they would be likely to buy. So just going forward for the project, Andover is the main focus for Azure. It's probably 95% of what we're focused on at the moment. We do have a little bit of a gold project we're looking at, but Andover is the main focus. The intention is we get the VC7 East resource completed and announced in the first quarter of next year. We then continue to drill out VC7 West towards the middle of next year, and around the middle of next year we look to put out a scoping study and go forward with additional exploration between now and then as well, testing all the other targets. The scoping study itself has a number of components. The metallurgy is underway, but we've got stage 2 of that coming up over the next 4 to 6 months. And there's also a bunch of other component studies that need doing as well, which you can see there on the slide. So all of those are actually underway right now. And so far, we've found absolutely no red flags being shown whatsoever. Everything we're seeing on the project is literally coming up trumps. So Azure and Andover, it's a fantastic combination. I guess in some ways, it's taking me back to my roots with the nickel discoveries we made at Cosmos for Jubilee Mines. Nickel exploration is a heck of a lot of fun for the exploration geologists like myself. We've built a really good team in place of people that have been involved with good nickel discoveries and also been involved with mine developments as well. So we have got that track record of being able to take projects through from the discovery stage right through into the mine development stage. Obviously, the nickel and the copper are very important components and commodities going forward in the clean and the green energy future that we're looking for. So it places Azure in a very strong position, being able to identify, to discover, and hopefully develop quality projects containing those commodities. The exploration is continuing very systematically, and we've got a whole pipeline of prospects that have yet to be tested, and that exploration will be continuing while we define those targets that have been well defined. Company's in a very strong position right at the moment, cash-wise, and in terms of having the right team in place. So it's basically full steam ahead, the right commodities. We do have a pipeline of targets yet to test in addition to those that we're already defining. And there's going to be a really solid period of news flow coming through from now through to at least the middle of next year as we take the Andover project through the exploration and the development stage. And for that, I thank you very much for your time.